budget update based on proposed governor's budget, including state revenues. This is an information item. Mr. Rice.
Good evening, Chairman Wright, Mr. Callahan, members of the board. With your permission tonight, I'm going to make this a brief presentation given the other business that's before the board tonight, and you can contact me at your own time with questions thereafter. The information being presented tonight is based on the governor's proposed budget for fiscal year 2022. It's the second year of a biennium, so our composite index remains the same. We are building this budget on an average daily membership of 1,815, which is a reduction of 46 students from the current year. The budget funding from the state is a little better than we had anticipated in the governor's budget, so we've not dropped off that much. Our SOQ programs total, and I'm not going to shine a laser up there and risk getting it in someone's eyes, but first category of the SOQ funded programs, we see a reduction of almost $16,000 compared to the current year. In Senate programs, we see a large increase of $265,000. That's primarily due to an increase in at-risk funding in the governor's budget, and also a one-time bonus payment allotment of $163,084. The funding in the categorical programs is down slightly, and that is due to both homebound instruction being less and the school lunch program. I do remind you that the items highlighted in yellow are pass-through accounts whereby we are basically the fiscal agent. We receive the money from the state and pass it on to other entities. So we back that out when we net out to our requested expenditure increases and our offsets, because it really doesn't impact our budget. It is included in the final budget presented to the county for appropriation purposes. The next category, lottery funded programs, again another large increase in the at-risk funding in the governor's proposed budget. We're also proposing a slight increase in the special educational regional tuition program of $22,000. And all that nets out in state, after we back out the pass-through adjustment, an increase of $296,630 in state funding. Again, 163 of that is in the one-time bonus payment. If we do not provide the 2% one-time bonus, we forfeit that $163,000. We have to certify that we provided it. The next category of other state funds, we're level and everything with Medicaid reimbursement. We're forecasting an increase of $30,000 to budget next year based on our trend over the last several years, and so that's an improvement. Under federal revenues, these are most of these categories are reimbursable funds. We have to spend the money and receive reimbursement. So the reimbursable funds have an equivalent amount of expenditure budgeted, which is an offset to the revenue and is a wash budgetarily. The items I would call your attention to are forest reserve. We're showing a $97,000 reduction in that funding source for secure rural schools. Congress has not reauthorized that funding for the next biennial period. They skipped a year when we didn't get it, and then reauthorized it late in the game for the previous 2 years. And the $24,792 that's budgeted is our standard tilt money, pay in lieu of taxes, since a large part of our county is off the tax rolls due to being a national forest. We're also looking at, for the first time, budgeting $59,922 in CARES Act money. There's an equivalent expenditure offset. That's for the MI-5s that we purchased this year. Some of the expense will carry over for 2 months into fiscal year 2022, and also to offset the additional costs we incurred for increasing one part-time nurse to full-time and making one full-time nurse a full 12-month position with managerial responsibilities. And again, there are expenditure offsets for that. At this time, this budget includes an assumption of level funding from the county. It also shows a reduction in $15,000 in miscellaneous other expenses, other revenues. And that's due to information the state provided all school divisions. We had previously charged a fee for Chromebook repairs and damages. The state, with all the virtual learning that came about as a result of COVID-19, will not allow us to charge that fee, so we backed that out of the budget. And so all that nets out for us with the adjustment for the pass-through. We actually are $274,552 better than our current year budget. Again, remember, that's assuming the $163,000 for the one-time bonus we're required to provide in order not to forfeit that money. Then the next section, you see the expenditure increases. Some of these, the majority of these have been requested by the various schools and administrators. The items that are highlighted in burnt orange are items I deem necessary. One is for an additional teaching position at Callahan due to large class sizes. Number two is the MiFi expenditures that I mentioned previously that has a revenue offset under CARES funding. Then the one-time 2% bonus is proposed by the governor, $283,973. We do not have to provide that. It's not mandated, but the reason I highlighted it is because we forfeit $163,000 if we don't provide it. That equates to the state covering approximately 57% of the cost of providing that bonus. The rest is the locality's responsibility. If we opted to make that a permanent increase, which in this scenario assumes a one step plus 1.2% to the scales, that's another $57,000 on top of the $283, but again, that's not necessary, it's not highlighted. I have put in it's a total guess at this point, additional $20,000 in case there is an increase in the superintendent's compensation as that search goes on by the board. That may or may not occur. And we do have a minimum wage impact resulting from the mandatory minimum wage going to $9.50 on May 1st. So this includes, we have one scale that was impacted in the custodial realm, and then a lot of other miscellaneous scales like activity runs for bus drivers, substitute clerical positions, and a few others like that. This excludes the cafeteria operations, so just one. And you can see some other miscellaneous expenses. Right now we're projecting $44,628 if we receive a 2% increase to the health insurance premiums and the board maintains the current percentage contributions. We could see an additional cost of $44,628 to that. And then various other increases. Again, please contact me if you have questions. The potential offsets for these expenditure increases netted out with the favorable increase in revenues. You'll see the list there. I won't read it all to you. Self-explanatory, I think. And when we net all that out, looking at every expenditure requested versus the offsets versus the increased revenue, we look at a deficit of $293,643. If you only look at the required expenditure increases, we actually have a favorable variance and would have that wherewithal to do other things with it. Now, the one thing that's really muddying the picture this year compared to years past is we have a significant allocation that's just been announced of CARES Act funding. The unfortunate part of that CARES Act funding is it's very limited in its use and what we can do with the money. And that's something Mr. Callahan and I and some others have still been debating on what its impact will be on this budget. It can also help us in some capital areas and HVAC. But that's really a lot of question marks associated with that at this point in time. So that concludes my abbreviated budget. Hopefully the General Assembly is scheduled to conclude on February 11th, so hopefully thereafter we will have our final state funding numbers based on the conference committee with the General Assembly. And that's when we'll get down to the brass tacks of finalizing our budget. I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Rice?
Was that quick enough, Chairman Wright?
I like it.
Thank you.